right, let's make a faux snowman painting. You're going to need these supplies plus a nail file, some paintbrushes, and just some general creativity. A wooden box or some sort of thing from Dollar Tree. The little blocks if you want to make the stands. You don't need to do that. Dollar Tree snowman napkin. Scissors. I've got some plastic down to protect my work surface. This is a box from the Dollar Tree. And the sticker on the back can cause some problems. So I'm going to take the sticker off and show you how I do that with my heat gun. I learned this a long time ago. This is the easiest way to get stickers off just about anything. So grab your heat gun or your blow dryer, warm it up, and then grab, I'm using a scraper, like a paint scraper from one of the dollar stores. You can use a razor or any kind of paint scraper, it's going to work. Once you get the glue loosened by heating it, it comes off very easily. Just like this, slide that under and just kind of wiggle back and forth and you'll see it just come right off. So much easier than trying to peel it off bit by bit. And it doesn't leave any, hardly any, if any at all, glue residue. Perfect, we are ready to paint. So I'm just using some white acrylic paint. You can use whatever you like, but I like white behind my napkins to make them pop. And I'm painting the little blocks because I want to use those as legs to make this stand, basically. So here we go, and I'm painting all sides but one. The one side I don't paint is what I'm going to actually glue to the project. So if you can do wood on wood, it's better than if you can do paint on paint. So try not to glue something painted to something painted because it's the paint that's holding them, not the wood. All right, I'm going to speed this up and we will move on. Next up, 2 coats of paint. So I'm just taking the white acrylic paint again with an inexpensive paintbrush and I'm painting on a couple of coats of white paint. So we're doing this in real time. I will speed it up in a minute. There's really not much to tell here. I don't add anything but white. It's just acrylic, it's not chalk. It's basic white paint and you just paint and dry until you're happy with the depth of the white. Sometimes you need a couple coats of paint, and I wanted a newer look here instead of a rustic look, so I did go for 2 coats of paint. I typically try and do the rustic look, but sometimes newer is the look you go for. So the more coats of paint you get on your white, because there's hardly any pigment, the more depth your white is going to have. So we're going to speed this up, and you can just do what you need to do. All right, I have my couple coats of paint on there and I'm just checking to make sure it's dry. You can see it's a little bit shiny right there, and since I use matte paint, that's a really good indicator to me that that is still not dry enough. So make sure you can't see any shine on your paint and just check with your hand, make sure it's at least dry to the touch before you move on to the next step. Here we go. I'm happier with that. It didn't raise the grain of the wood very much, or I would have given it a quick sand, but I didn't need to. And now I'm going to move on to the napkins. So this is from the Dollar Tree. It's a winter napkin. I thought it was a cute little thing. So I'm just going to, instead of doing it the way I normally do with wetting around the outside edges, today I'm going to try a different way of distressing, making it look a little distressed. And that's with a paintbrush. So first we're going to cut this out, and then we're going to pull it apart. All right, we've got it cut out the way we want it. I'm just getting rid of that plastic. I'm not going to need it anymore. And the glare just gets annoying when we're trying to do a video. So I have a couple pieces of painter's tape, and I've taken my napkin, and it's typically for Dollar Tree, they're only about 2 ply. Very rare are they 3. So I'm just putting a piece of tape on each side very lightly because I don't want to rip my napkin, and I'm just able to grab the edge that way and start pulling it apart to get it down to a single ply. This just makes it look a little more hand painted when it's on the painting. And see, I'm just very gently pulling off that painter's tape. I like to use painter's tape because it doesn't have a ton of stick. Masking tape and regular tape can be too sticky. So you just decide what's for you, or put your masking tape somewhere where it's not going to matter for tears. So I'm just figuring out my placement here. And then I'm going to go in with the Mod Podge. Grab yourself a brush. And don't forget, I like to use plastic wrap on top because the paper is very delicate once it starts to get wet. As soon as you have Mod Podge on it, it's a very wet, super thin tissue paper. So you want it to be, you want to be able to flatten it out. And the only way I've found that works successfully for me with wet Mod Podge is this. So I just grab a piece of plastic wrap that I'm going to have ready, and off we go with the Mod Podge. I'm going to paint it on and make sure everything is covered with a decent coat of Mod Podge. And then we're going to put the napkin on. You're going to notice I use my paintbrush and I go across both ways. So I go lengthways and then height-wise, I go back and forth. I want to make sure every bit of that is covered and has some Mod Podge, and I want it to be wet. So you need a fair amount, but do not overbrush this. Don't keep going and going and going, or it's going to start reactivating your paint underneath, meaning the paint's going to get wet from the Mod Podge on top and start to mix with the Mod Podge. So you want to do this fairly quickly, but make sure you go back and forth in all directions, cross-hatching so that you're good to go. All right. So there we go. You have a little bit of a window here. I'm just laying it on top. I haven't pushed anything down yet, and I'm kind of deciding, do I think that's even enough? And then I think, no. So I still have, like I said, just gently laid it down so you can very carefully just give it a tiny little pull. But be careful doing this. Try not to if you can avoid it. And then on with the plastic wrap so that you can rub it down and it will be nice and nicely adhered to your board. Just very gently, when you're going to pull off your plastic wrap, just really gently pull it off. So we just rub down, make sure everything's flat against that board, and then slowly, see how slowly I'm pulling it back? Nice and gently so it doesn't pull up your napkin again. And wow, you have a great flat podge basically. Now give it a dry, or just let it dry naturally. It will, if there's any wrinkles or bubbles in it now, it will usually dry out as the napkin sort of shrinks back to its regular size. When it gets wet from the Mod Podge, it can be a little sort of like a wool sweater. It can be misshapen, so just be aware of that. So I'm going to dry this because we don't want to wait all night. And then we'll move on. There we go, nice and dry and ready. I am finally moving on to what I think is the fun part. Grab your painter's brush. I like these because they're very, very scruffy, and that's what we want here, something really scruffy so it can show the edges when you're painting. And we're just going to tap. We're going to use the paintbrush, and we're just going to gently tap up and down right along the edge. See this? I'm tapping. I'm not dragging the brush. I'm not painting. I'm just tapping up and down because I want those bristles to give me that kind of raggedy finish along the edge to cover up the straight edge. So just go very gently, very easily, and you can see where it's just starting to fill in the way I want it to. Here's a quick look closer up so you can see along the right edge there how it's starting to look a little ragged instead of very straight. And that's what we're hoping for with these brushes. So you can get them in different sizes, but I like this one the best. They're cheap. You get them at the dollar store. You can get them at Home Depot, places like that. And you just keep working the edge until you're happy with it. There, didn't that turn out super cute? So now I'm going to add the legs because I want this to be able to stand on its own. I could just leave it flat like it is, but just for fun, I'm going to add some little legs to it. And if that doesn't work for you, just leave them off. Finally, because I love a little bit of black and white on any of my projects, I'm going to add a little black and white check bow to it to just pop the colors a little bit more. Again, totally optional. Do whatever colors you have. This is a wired ribbon from Michaels, and I'm just going to make an unusual bow that I don't usually make, but I just wrap it in a little circle there to get that's the top of the bow. And then I flip it back and forth like this. This only works with double-sided ribbon. Back and forth a couple times until I get it where I want it. And that's going to be the back of the bow. Then I'm going to take a long piece. This is kind of hard to describe. Twirl it around. And I'm going to use my pipe cleaner to gather all that together. If you want me to do a slower version of this bow, just let me know inside the group and I will definitely make a more up-close version of this. I've done it with all kinds of wired ribbon, big, small, in between. It's a cute little bow. So just let me know. There we go. And then I'm going to, you can see I just used that to, that bottom loop I'm going to use to make my tails. That's all it's there for. So now I'm going to use my scissors and cut it in half. And there, I have the tails for my bow. Voila! Boom, just like that. And then I like to glue my bow on, but I also like to glue the tails in place so that they have they stay where you put them. You don't have to keep messing around with them. So I'm just going to dovetail it here. Just give it a quick trim. Cut it off whatever way you like. I've sort of measured it. You saw that. And then I just decide where I want the bow to go. And with a little bit of glue, you don't need much. We're just going to add the bow to the corner. And then I'm going to glue down the tails so they stay where I put them and I don't have to keep playing with them. So once you mess around with it, you get it where you want it, and just a tiny touch of glue is all you're going to need to make it stay in place. There we go, just like that. I'm holding it down with my emery board. You do you. Little finger protectors, gloves, whatever you have. But be careful, hot glue is hot, you all know that. So that emery board was what I had on hand, so there you go, that's exactly what I used. And then you can play with the little, I just twist this down a little bit more. I want the center loop to be a little smaller, so you can mess around. Because of the wire, you can change it around a little bit. And there you go. It is finished, and it's ready to stand up wherever I want to put it.